What is going on, busy bariatrics? In our last episode, we covered so many different tips, tricks, and techniques on how to stay active. On today's episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to put yourself first in your bariatric journey. This may seem like a little hoitsy-toitsy or a little bit rah-rah, but in reality, from coaching clients and looking and interviewing so many people in the bariatric community, I have learned that putting yourself first is the ultimate game changer in your bariatric journey. More than macros, more than staying active or any set type of workout or even any number one habit that's done. But putting yourself first, we're going to look at why it does so well, how it makes sure that you are successful in your bariatric journey, and I'm going to give you the one tool that will absolutely help you crush your bariatric journey more than any other. But before we get to that one tool, we're going to go over why putting yourself matters. So, after surgery, you need to understand that you have a lot more responsibilities than prior to bariatric surgery. You have to hit a water goal, you have to hit a protein goal, you have to start incorporating movement, and you have to do that on a stomach that's about 20% the size that it normally was. That's a really daunting task. I remember early on in my bariatric journey, it could take me all day just to drink 24 ounces of water, and if I didn't start at the beginning of the day and drink from my little 1 ounce shot glasses, I could not figure out how to get everything together. As I started to develop and evolve, you also have to hit all those major points like incorporating more protein, going to your pureed phase. How do you incorporate whole foods? How do you make sure slider foods don't get in? When are you going to work out? How much are you going to work out? Is a step goal enough? Is your cardio going? See how I just keep listing it? It is overwhelming, and that's just what stays on the top of my head. I realized very early on that I needed a way to sort, organize, and do all these things, and that if I wanted to get it accomplished, I would have to change my priorities. That's why, you always hear that phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. Putting yourself first is kind of that pure example of if you are not taking care of yourself, especially early on in your bariatric journey, you are going to be tired, you are going to be lethargic, your weight is not going to come off, and you might start even feeling like a failure if you're going through very early stalls. There's some science behind why that happens, not just from a metabolic standpoint, but when we look at our science and behavior change, people who put themselves first in their weight loss experiences and prioritize weight loss in their weight loss experience get better results than those who don't. Now, if you're anything like me, you're a father, you have a career, I hear it all the time, but Rob, I have kids at home, I have to show up for this, I have to do everything, and I don't want to knock any of that. And I have to tell you, I have some clients that have upwards of 6 and 7 kids, and they still find ways to put themselves first. And this episode is to show that no matter what you have on your plate, there are small, actionable ways you can put yourself first every single time. And the first way that we really get to it in Busy Bariatrics is we teach you to hold time for what's important, which means you need to crush your calendar. More than any other tool, more than any other app, more than any other workout, nutrition, macro split, I truly believe that the best clients and the best bariatric patients get their results because they are looking at a holistic approach. They realize that there is a big grand plan to get everything done. And they're willing to put a schedule in place so that they realize this is a marathon and not a sprint, and not just this 30-day fad or 60, 90-day fad to lose all the weight. We do that by having people start in their calendar. And there's some very simple things that should go on everyone's calendar, regardless of what you do. First is, I always say, you need to sleep. I know it sounds weird. We're starting with what we usually finish with, but having a set bedtime so that you wake up every day at the same time is going to make a world of difference. For me, I go to bed by 10 o'clock. From 9 to 10 is the shutoff valve time. And what I say is at 9 o'clock, I finish my coaching calls, I finish my community calls, I do all the things I need, I shut the laptop, and I start my nighttime routine so that by 10 o'clock, I am ready to go to bed, rested, refreshed, and ready to go with everything. That's going to be the first thing that we do. At this point in my life, I still teach every day because I love my job. So in order to have money, I kind of need to put that in second. So the second thing I put in is I have to go to work. So for me, that's like from 7 o'clock till 3 is my set work time. So that is blocked out on my calendar. Okay, that leaves afternoons, evenings, and early mornings. Well, here's where it gets a little tricky. My wife coaches field hockey, which I absolutely love and I think it's awesome. And my kids are in activities that I really don't want to miss. I want to show up for them, which means my afternoons are usually locked solid for that. Well, I have to coach and I have to create content and I have to do business stuff. That really happens in the evening. So almost after dinner and early afternoon, all the way till bedtime, is when I coach. Okay, so then when am I working out? That really only leaves before work, which means I have to do early morning lifts, which I'm totally fine with because I have time on my calendar to do that. If I said I would get to it when I get to it and didn't schedule that in, there is no way I would get to the gym in the afternoons. And even today, it's rare, but every now and then I'll get to the gym in the afternoon, and mountains usually have to move for me to get in there. So we kind of work that together. You then look at your weekends and you realize like that's kind of the same structure. So we hold afternoon and evening time as a family on Fridays, and then Saturday, Sunday, we have morning, noon, and night. And we try to keep two of those three boxes filled, and the third one we keep totally open for one person in the family. So, for an example, my wife likes Saturday morning. She does not like to do anything. And I don't blame her. Like, she works a high end job and she gets the kids out in the morning and she will get her workouts and her personal stuff done in the evening times while I'm doing everything. So, Saturday morning is her, like, do not disturb time. And that's where I will go to the gym a little bit earlier. I'll come back, get breakfast for the kids, and we'll kind of work that all out. But then Saturday afternoon is kind of my business time where I work on coaching and getting client packages together. That's my undisturbed time where I'm working. So my wife will take the kids out and go do something fun. While I'm recording this, my wife has my youngest daughter out and my oldest daughter is at a play event with her friends. So this is another example of like us taking a Sunday, blocking out who has to go where, and go with everything. By having clear schedules and boundaries like this, it really does allow us to move the pieces and get everything else to work. Just like almost macro Jenga, which we talked about in understanding nutrition, your schedule Jenga is almost as important. I realize that if I really want to get workouts done, I have to do them almost Monday to Friday and early morning because life's going to happen in the afternoon and evening, and we start by getting that held in. The other part is when you're early on in your bariatric journey, you can still get amazing results by doing very little and holding very little time. And that's because you're putting yourself in such a caloric deficit and your stomach can only hold so much that the results almost flywheel off. As we notice with clients who come to us who are in a stall or who are really struggling, we'll get to the bottom of like, well, why are we not mapping out our protein? It's like, I have too much time in our day. Okay, then we need to start planning our meals in advance. Well, I don't know how to do that. By setting a clear schedule in place of what we're eating, it allows us to go to the grocery store once a week, getting the foods and ingredients we need and mapping it out. Even today, I take a little bit of time on Wednesdays to kind of map out what we're going to have. I run the grocery list by my wife on Thursdays so that by Friday, depending on who has field hockey, gymnastics, or whatever schedule we're going on, we determine who's going to go grocery shopping. So, like right now, we will both go. Kate coaches on Friday afternoons for our girls' field hockey team. So we'll kind of go there. Stella is at gymnastics, so I will get Stella out to gymnastics while field hockey's going on. I will catch the second half of the game. When we're done, I will take my oldest daughter, Allie, home to get changed and get ready to go out. And Kate will stay out near gymnastics and get groceries done. And then I will do client check-ins before my oldest tells me where she is going for her Friday evening. It's usually just a local friend's house, but between pickups and rides, Fridays really consist of me getting coaching check-ins in between all of those. Just holding the time to get that schedule in can be overwhelming at first, but by having everything together, you really do have who's getting groceries, who's defrosting food, who's getting laundry together, and it makes sure that everything runs like a well-oiled machine. That comes with practice and repetition. But the quickest way to make sure that you're getting results with your nutrition is going to be that you hold time for both meal planning, meal prepping, and meal cooking. I hold an hour every day to assemble dinner, even if it's a simple dinner, and I allow myself to just have it set. So I'll put a podcast on of an episode that I really want to listen to, and I will kind of just zone out and either chop onions or get the vegetables together. Or in September, and it's turning out to be October because Kate's doing so well with field hockey, they're going longer in the season, which is good. But it does mean the schedule is a little bit more intense. It's more of like I'm just getting a lean protein together, a vegetable out of the freezer, and then rice. In order to do that, we have to map out some prepackaged foods. And so that we don't keep running the same 4 meals into the ground, we build a rotation on our calendar and kind of work that into the system that we have. We also know that we have like our Sunday gravy as well as our Saturday crockpot recipes. We flipped it around this week because of stuff. But to give you an idea, like there's chili on in the crockpot as I'm recording this because Kate is going out and running all of her things. I am recording. We still want to have dinner as a family, and chili's going to be the best way to get it done. Plus, like it's getting cold, and chili season is the best. So being able to protect your space so that you get your nutrition together is going to be the first way that you can show up for yourself. So many times I'll have my clients be like, oh man, I need to crush like 6 workouts a day because I'm not going to have the time to plan my food. And I'll say, actually flip that around. Because you don't have time to flip your food, reduce down to even like 4 or 3 days a week of working out and take that extra time to like take one morning to plan out your food, take another morning and get some stuff done so that you can go grocery shopping in the evening, and then batch cook some foods so that you have stuff to go for the week. A lot of times in our bariatric journey, we kind of think that we need to do double down on workouts when in reality, honing out and getting our schedule ready for our nutrition is going to hold the best spot. The other good thing is prior to bariatric surgery and really getting clear on our calendar, we would use a lot of these days as excuses to get fast casual, which is not necessarily the most calorically friendly options out there or bariatrically friendly. And that would mean that like we were eating on the go and we would be hemorrhaging calories there. So simple things, even when we have those busy days, is I will pack a lunch and a dinner. Fridays, I pack like a dinner so that when I get done school at 2:30, we have to stay till 2:45 because we want the kids to dismiss. And I take that 15 minutes and I absolutely love it. I will shut the door when I'm done my last period class. I will have my meal there and I will kind of just sit in silence and eat. And that alone is like a little bit of self-care where I don't really think about anything. Sometimes I put on lo-fi, sometimes I just sit in silence. I have a meal to myself and I just quietly decompress before I start doing the after school activities. So that's how we kind of do it with that. When we look at it, you have to understand that that simple 15 minutes is a form of self-care. So many times I hear people say, I feel jealous, I feel undeserving, I feel like I'm letting other people down if I take some time for myself. And the truth is, like, I think we get self care so wrong of thinking it has to be like we're putting our feet up and we're getting pedicures and we're booking massages. And while those are all good, they're also expensive. Holding some time every day for self-care is a great way to really show up for yourself, and making sure it's in your calendar helps do it as well. So for an example, working out in the morning is a form of self-care for me. It allows me to work out. I get to see my buddy Adam 3 or 4 days a week. And then the other days I'm working out silently by myself. And that really is all I need to kind of get my mind right, clear my head, listen to a podcast that I like, and work on the results I want to get. That's self-care. The other form of self-care for me is that 15 minutes I talked about at the end of my school day when I have Leonard. That's a form of self-care. Me shutting off my laptop at 9 and then kind of just laying out my clothes while I'm listening to a podcast or music, or getting my stuff together and packing my lunch and doing it at my own pace is a form of self-care. Sometimes proactive self-care just shows up of having scheduled time where we spend it with our kids and with each other as a married couple. So for an example, Mondays and Wednesdays, I will read to my youngest Stella, or I will read with her at 9 o'clock till 9:30. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I will chill with my oldest daughter, Allie, where I will just kind of go up to her room and hang out. And then Fridays and Saturdays, we take like an hour, and Kate and I will just watch some true crime documentaries or some dumb movies that we like, or Hard Knocks. Usually it's some sort of like reality or mindless where we're just kind of watching and we don't have to do. And again, simple self-care. Doesn't really cost much other than the Netflix membership, and our ability to just sit out. After I'm done recording this, because it's a Sunday, I will go out and have a cigar and watch TV. And that's just another form of self care for me where I'm kind of at peace and doing what I want to do. So, again, doesn't have to be big and elaborate, but by putting it in proactively into your schedule, it allows you to kind of almost like decompress and stress and do everything. Think of it almost like you take your car into maintenance so that you don't blow major gaskets, or you turn your air conditioning and heating unit off every now and then so that it cools down and resets and get everything. Same goes for yourself. You're not a machine, and even the best machines burn out. Think of like the newest iPhone that's coming out. It probably has an amazing battery life that is better than the old iPhone's battery life, but if you still ran your iPhone nonstop, it would die. Just like the audio equipment I'm recording on, just like the laptop I'm recording on, and everything else. If machines can burn out, why do you think you can't? And that's one of the things we work on with your coaching is when are you holding time to get these things done? Because that's ultimately going to be what gives you the best results. Gotta take a pause and drink. So, another reason why people really struggle with putting themselves first is if there's one recurring theme I notice in the bariatric community is that a lot of people prior to bariatric surgery had people-pleasing tendencies. And the funny part is the more I have like deeper relationships with both fellow podcast recorders, content creators, coaches, and just community members, it'll be a recurring theme that I've noticed is when I was big, I was afraid I wouldn't get accepted into things or not be allowed to go to places or not invited to places. So I always said yes because I was worried if I didn't go and if I wasn't the life of the party, I would never get an invite again. And as someone who did not get invited to a lot of things in high school, it was kind of one of the reasons why I always said yes to things is I wanted to make sure I got the next invite that came around. So because of that, I do have people-pleasing tendencies. The reason I say people-pleasing tendencies and that I'm not a people pleaser is saying you're a people pleaser is kind of like you are identifying as a people pleaser. And another thing that we work on when we coach our clients is this idea of how do you identify yourself and breaking down like the stigmas or the beliefs around how you identify. So saying that you're a people pleaser means that you're going to continue that pattern and that it's unbreakable. But by saying you have people pleasing tendencies, you know that you have the tendency to set that up, but you also have the ability to change it and allow it to be fluid. And that's kind of what I coach as well is the idea of breaking your old mental beliefs and going from there. Which comes to the next part. You have to start building mental resilience and confidence in your bariatric journey. I get it. We've removed 80% of our stomach, so it should be easy to do everything else. Like, that's the hard part, or we had this surgery so that we didn't have to work that hard. That's probably the biggest red flag that I see when I get into clarity calls, because we don't actually accept everyone into busy bariatrics. You have to really be in a space that you're open to coaching and that you're open to my style of coaching and my team style of coaching. And one of those things that we really pry on is what level of responsibility do you have to your health and wellness? And they'll usually ask, like, well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, okay, what percentage of your results do you think are going to come from your sleeve? And what percentage of the results are going to come from what you're actually doing in a program? If they think it's any more than 50-50, then I start to have some questions and concerns, and we start to dig deeper on, like, if you think the sleeve is going to do all this work, why hasn't it gotten you the results yet? And that answer really does start to change the mindset or mind frame around the fact that we as bariatric patients have to do the work and we have to do it daily, and that our sleeve only does a very small part of our early bariatric journey. It really is like what is the catalyst to get us to move forward, develop, advance, and get everything else done. So some ways we do that is start to identify and build that mental resilience that this is going to be work. You're going to have to be able to crush your calendar and prioritize yourself along the way. You're going to have to set time to plan out your meals for the week. You're going to have to set time to cook those meals. You're going to have to grocery shop. You're going to have to work out. You're going to have to move your body. You're going to have to get a step goal. There's a whole bunch of things you have to do in order to get results after bariatric surgery. And by doing all these things, you're going to, one, get better results than if you just relied on your sleeve. But also, two, you're going to start to realize like you're doing the heavy lifting, not your sleeve. That's the biggest mindset shift that putting yourself first makes you realize is that, yes, we've had bariatric surgery. And if you've decided to have a GLP-1, I totally get that too. That is part of the process. But even if you're on a GLP-1, you still have to mentally go through and plan out your meals. You still have to prioritize your movement. You do have to prioritize resistance training because at that limited caloric intake, just like bariatric surgery, you're going to lose muscle at the same rate as you lose fat. So it's very important to build muscle with resistance training and hit your protein goals so that you're not losing as much as possible. Either way, whether it's a GLP-1 or bariatric surgery or any of the diets that ultimately people try before those two things, you need to be very clear that you ultimately have to do the mental work and plan and regiment your life out to get the results that you want. Now, when people say like, well, Rob, that sounds really restricted, the answer is, well, yeah, fat loss usually is. And that's where I think the bariatric community can really learn to change their mindset around this idea that restriction is necessarily bad. You chose to have a surgery that is either going to remove 80% of your stomach or rewire your stomach. That is the definition of restriction. You are physically removing or rewiring an organ to create restriction. So, if you're willing to do that, you should at least be open to the idea of restricting your calorie portions, restricting your food choices, restricting your lifestyle habits and patterns that you have, because you've already decided to go through a medical procedure that's going to restrict a part of your body. I'm not saying you have to do it forever, but when you are in that early stage and your goal is fat loss, having a restrictive lifestyle is probably going to benefit you more than saying you're just going to wing it and see what happens. I have probably interviewed about a dozen, maybe 24 people who are like, I don't really like structure. I'm just going to wing it. And more times than not, when I meet with them a year later or 2 years later, they're still trying to lose that last 10 pounds, or they're not happy with their bariatric results, or they're going to try another keto juice cleanse fast, whatever the fad is. They're going to do their Orange F Burn camp. And it's one of those of like, yeah, they're chasing dopamine, but at the same time, they're not really putting themselves first and just building a clear structure and plan in place that's going to get them the results that they want. But anywho, I'm like going down all these rabbit holes on what we do to put ourselves first. So as you do it, you have to build that mental resilience and you really have to develop confidence. And we continue to do that when we coach in Busy Bariatrics by just setting up small attainable goals. It may be something as simple as, yeah, you don't have to wake up every morning at 5 a.m., especially if you normally wake up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. What we coach our patients or our clients to do is just start 5 minutes earlier and have a cup of tea to yourself or stretch your body. And then after you're normally getting up at like 6:55 as opposed to 7, add another 5 minutes on. And over time, you'll eventually get to 5 a.m. Who cares how long that takes in the grand scheme of things? Because even if it took 2 years, if you told someone, hey, you weigh 200 pounds now, I'm using like really random numbers, and your goal weight is 175. If you were weighing 175 in 2 years from now, would you be happy? They'd say, absolutely, I would. Okay. So stop trying to do it yesterday and give it the time that you need and schedule it out and make it more of a marathon. And you'll eventually hit that 25 pounds of being lost. By doing that small little bit of snowballing when it comes to waking up a little bit earlier, getting an extra 1,000 steps in, lifting for 1 extra rep or 2 extra reps on an exercise, those small wins over time develop the results that you're going to look back and say, man, this really was worth it, and I'm really glad that I did it this way. The next part is you have to have some self-compassion for yourself, and some perfectionism needs to go out the window. A lot of times people struggle with macros or movement because they think that they need to do it perfectly, or they need to be able to crush everything at the beginning. And if they don't really get the results that they want. And this is why, like, I get really hesitant about meal plans specifically, and why I get real hesitant about like burn boot classes or any of those. If you are starting out on your bariatric journey, having to eat a very exact amount and being right or wrong whether you do that is probably going to cause you to struggle with more all or nothing mindset than if you just needed to get close and develop and go the distance. And the same goes true with those classes. They start at a very specific time, so that means like, you know, some of them lock the doors right at like 5 a.m., which means if you're there at 5:01 and it's locked, you can't get in, and now you've kind of wasted a bit of your morning. It's why I really like going to resistance training and doing your own schedule for it, because there's some mornings where I sleep in an extra 5 minutes, or I got to go to the bathroom a little longer for 5 minutes, or I scroll my phone for 5 minutes. Sometimes all three of those happen and I'm 15 minutes late. Okay, well, I can still get 45 minutes of my workout in instead of an hour, and I can kind of pick what needs to come off and what needs to stay on. Somehow, magically, ab work always gets thrown off. It's weird how that always works with me, but you know, we all have our vices and we all have our weak points. Point being, you need to start to develop that, and you need to understand that you are not going to be perfect. If anything, the harder you work and the more you struggle for it, the more you're going to like it. It's why Rocky is considered like one of the greatest sports movies of all time, and why it's won Academy Awards. Rocky goes the distance and gets the living daylights beat out of him, and he loses. I know, spoiler alert on a 50-year-old movie. If you haven't seen Rocky by now, what are you doing with your life? Also, if you're upset that I spoiled Rocky, like, what is wrong with you at this point? Anywho, Rocky loses. That's kind of the beauty of it. He goes toe to toe with like the world's greatest in this movie. He gets the daylights beat out of him for I think it's 16 rounds, which I don't even think they have in boxing anymore. And ultimately he loses by decision. So why do we remember that movie and why do we love it so much? Because he went and he fought every single day. I think that's the same like when I look at like when I bench press or when I squat and when I hit a PR. People don't understand. Like, I failed my bench PR more times than I've hit it. I failed my squat PR more times than I hit it. It's constantly working for it, of getting one more rep better, getting 2.5 more pounds heavier. You know, for runners, I guess it's like if you shave like 30 seconds off. It's all about like getting into this mindset of going the distance and not having to do it perfect, but pursuing it is going to make such a big difference. So, you now know that you have to put all this together. And you also know the importance of putting yourself first. The final stage, or the final boss that I help coach clients with, is how do you advocate for yourself? You have this beautiful plan, but you also have a boss probably you have to answer to. If you are me, you are married, so you cannot make your decisions on your own because it relies other family members involved. Meaning that, like, Kate and I make a lot of decisions together. We have children who have obligations as well. We have family members. We are parts of different organizations. All of that comes into play with how you're going to advocate for yourself. And those pressures are going to push your boundaries. Some simple ones that I have is like when people say like, hey, we want to go out and we want to go drinking on like a Thursday night. It's like, well, I'll DD, but I'm also going to leave at like 9 o'clock because I want to get up and I want to get my workout in. It's not that I'm saying no, I'm just saying no to that exact thing and going through. And that's a technique we teach our clients to do is it's not no forever, it's just no for now. And the best counter is giving a counter date and time. So here's the technique you could use in your bariatric journey, whether it's the holidays or anything else, and you have priorities. Say you go to the gym every day at Wednesday at like 5 p.m. and someone says, hey, do you want to go to happy hour? You can say, I would love to go to happy hour. I just can't do it today because I have too short of notice. But why don't we shoot for next Wednesday and I will absolutely go. Now, here's the beauty. You're not saying no forever. You're just saying this date and time doesn't work. That's the first part of it. you're saying that you're actually okay with the idea and activity, so it's not a personal thing or the event itself. And then you're giving a counter time where you can work. And the beauty is, they may say, oh, next Wednesday doesn't work for me. Let's do next Friday. And be like, perfect. I'm putting this on the calendar. Can you confirm and lock into this? If they say absolutely, put it into your calendar, and then you can work a couple things over and around. You can move your workouts around. Like if you're going to party at happy hour, what I would say is then maybe you don't work out Saturday morning super early. If you know you're going to eat a whole bunch of fun appetizers and maybe have a couple adult beverages, then you might want to eat a super high protein, low carb meals leading up because you know you're going to have carbs and alcohol at the end of the day and move your calories accordingly. It allows you to still have fun and commit to these events while doing it on the terms and conditions that'll help you get results. So, as you're doing this, you need to think about what is working for you, what is not working for you, what do you need to adjust, and what do you need to do less of as opposed to more of. By doing this and getting it clear on your calendar, you're going to help crush your bariatric journey. So, that's the way you put yourself first. In our next episode, we're going to cover healthy forms of dopamine. So with that, we're going to leave. If you like this episode and think I deserve it, please leave a rating and review on your podcast player, and you are going to be entered to win a free product from one of our awesome sponsors. If you want more content like this, please make sure you subscribe both to the podcast and to our YouTube page, which is Busy Bariatrics. As always, I'm Rob DeMedio, and keep getting busy.